Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Norway Chess 2023. Things are heating up in the last third of the tournament. Fabiano Caruana is in first place, but right on his heels are Hikaru Nakamura and Alireza Firouzja. And will Magnus Carlsen make a comeback? We've got all eyes on him. This was an absolutely insane round with some absurd games and openings. And before we jump into the recap, I want to thank the sponsor of today's video, Babbel. Babbel is one of the top language learning apps in the world, and chess is one of the top board games in the world, so it's a perfect match. Personally, I love Babbel because the lessons are fun, engaging, and practical, made by real language learning experts. Now, I've used Babbel to improve my Spanish. Yo puedo hablar sobre comida, los deportes, o ajedrez. Pero I'm traveling to Italy this summer, and I don't know if you know this, but they speak Italian in Italy. And I wanted to use Babbel to prepare for my trips. I want to know the basics such as ciao, arrivederci, grazie, thank you, buongiorno, hello. But I also need some practical usage as well. Il conto, grazie. In che direzione è il Colosseo? Yeah, my pronunciation's not great, but with Babbel, I'm sure it will get there. So you should get started with Babbel today. Folks, you know how this works. Click the link in the description or scan the QR code to get 60% off your Babbel subscription. All right, let's get back to the video. As always, a big thank you and shout out to my partner in crime, sponsored Gotham. My friends, it's Magnus Carlsen versus Alireza Firouzja. This is the world championship that could have been, as Magnus famously said, that if Alireza Firouzja were to have won the candidates tournament, Magnus would have considered sticking around. E4 from Magnus. C5, the Sicilian defense, the most combative opening. Knight F3, the most combative response. White is ready to play the move D4. Will Alireza play Knight C6 or D6? E6, all right. Alireza clearly looking to play a Taimanov with knight to c6 or potentially a6. Something happens here. Our recap is going to get interesting on move number 3. Because in this position, Magnus Carlsen did not play the move d4. He did not play the move knight c3. He did not play the move b3. He did not play the move g3. He did not play c4. In this position, Magnus Carlsen played bishop to d3. Let me tell you something right now. If any of you played the move bishop to d3 in this position, I would call the police. I would call the police to arrest you. All right? If you had an older sibling, I would give them permission to throw you across a room. That is a terrible move for most players. You see, bishop d3 is ridiculous. It breaks every principle in chess. You're going to have to move that bishop a second time. You are blocking your center pawn. Your bishop has absolutely no scope in the position. Magnus plays it because he knows that at the very worst, he's going to get an equal position. White has given up all chances for the advantage. At the very best, Alireza will respond in a very aggressive way, like his playing style. Alireza will now no longer be in any sort of comfort zone, and Alireza will lose. Knight c6, castles, and Magnus's concerns are very quickly justified, as in this position, Alireza plays the move g5. My friends, Alireza and Magnus are sitting front row on a roller coaster with loosely fastened seatbelts. They're not going to fall out, but they might throw up. Here we go. Alireza plays g5 with the very clear intention of playing the move g4. Now Magnus plays bishop b5. I mean, this is just utterly ridiculous. This is the stupidest thing I've ever seen. And the fact that he is, you know what? Fine, let him get away with it. He is the best player in the world. He's been the best player for over a decade. What is this bishop d3, bishop b5 business? There are children watching. When Magnus leaves the playing hall, he's going to sign autographs for 5-year-olds. You think those 5-year-olds are supposed to be playing bishop d3, bishop b5? Do you think that? Shut up, you don't think that. Bishop b5 and Magnus plays take. This man played bishop d3, bishop b5, and he took the knight. Half of his first 6 moves were played with the bishop, and it's not even there anymore. d3. You trade your light-squared bishop, you should put pawns on light squares. That pawn is hanging. Magnus inviting the pawn in. G4. By the way, you will notice, look at the time spent on these moves. 8 minutes to move the bishop again. Another 5 to capture. Another 11 to play pawn to d3. This is fascinating stuff. I gotta tell you, this is dank stuff. G4, the knight goes back to d2 because it wants to go to b3 and target the pawn on c5. Alireza, bro, this man's not stopping. Alireza can play d6, d5, he can develop his knight. Those moves are not that good because the pawn is hanging, but I'm just saying, this man plays h5. What? This looks like two 600s had some brownies and are now playing chess against each other, okay? I mean, I just don't understand. I don't. What? Knight b3 and Magnus plays f4. He plays f4 because if Alireza plays en passant, queen f3 threatens queen f7. If Alireza does not play en passant, then, well, Magnus is going to have good attacking possibilities and his f-file will be open. And Alireza might be living in France, but actually, contrary to popular belief, just because you live in France doesn't mean you have to play en passant. Plays knight e7. And so far, my friends, everything has been looking pretty good for white. Now Magnus plays bishop d2. This dude hangs a pawn. Magnus played bishop d2 because it's disrespectful. He could have played here, or knight c3, or knight d2, knight c4, or maybe c3. This man plays bishop d2 for one reason, because it's disrespectful. That's it. That's why he played the move. And also, he might have thought it was the best move. The idea of the move is twofold. First of all, bishop c3. Okay, so for example, a5, bishop c3, knight c3. You just want to get rid of black's bishop. Second of all, if black plays bishop b2, he's going to go bishop a5 attacking the queen, and then he's going to go here. And he's sacrificing the rook. And it is way too dangerous to take this for black. White not only attacks the rook back, if black goes here, white now plays queen f6, e5, and white is dominating. Knight c4, knight e4, knight d6, knight f6, knight c5, knight d7, So, for that reason, Alireza now has to go home. But Alireza won a pawn. Magnus, his whole little game plan here cost him a pawn. And now he plays queen e1 and rook d1. And Alireza plays f5. I mean, this is one of the most absurd games of chess I have ever seen two super grandmasters play. The average rating, my friends, of this game is something like 28-10. The average rating. These are two of the top 4 rated players on planet Earth. What even is this position? All right? You got bishops firing away into you got the bishop over here. You got the insane pawn cluster. One guy's king is probably not going to be happy castling on either side of the board. E5 now is trying to knock on the door. It looks like black's position is on the verge of collapse. He plays knight g6. He plays knight g6 because if you take on d6, black just goes here. Can Magnus play knight c4? Probably. He probably should go for this, but instead he goes knight c4 right away, and that gives Alireza time to play take, and d5. Alireza is just giving up the pawn on c5. This is a necessary defensive measure to slide his queen back. How can a man have 4 of his 6 most important pieces completely on the back rank after 20 moves and not be worse? I don't know. I told you nothing about this game makes sense. It looks like white should just be completely winning, but black's position is shockingly resilient, and he castles. Not only does he castle, he begins consolidating and counterattacking. His pieces here are doing literally, when I say literally, I am not exaggerating, they are doing nothing. They are doing nothing. Nothing. You could just play g3. They are doing nothing. And somehow Alireza is not worse. And in this position, Alireza had to play the move c5, giving back the pawn to open up the c-file and queen c4. Alireza doesn't do that. Magnus now consolidates, and now Magnus is back in business. This is a vintage position for Magnus to go to work. Alireza is going to suffer. Knight d4, rook doubling on the only file in the game. Magnus's knight on d4 is going to see 3 different pawns that it can target at any moment. And as I said a long time ago, these pieces are doing nothing. This piece is doing nothing. That piece is doing nothing. This is Magnus's position to win. Knight d4. Look at Firouzja's pieces, just standing around like absolute bozos. Okay, he plays h4. Okay, and so what? a5. Magnus, methodically, that's it. There's nothing there. Absolutely nothing there. Alireza here does something, which is one of the only ways to save a losing position. He creates confusion. If Alireza sits back and defends himself, he will lose. So he sacrifices a bishop. Sacrifices a bishop, infiltrates with the knight, forces a retreat from Magnus, and now we have the following position. Rook h7, Alireza's got pawns, a knight, and rook, and he's coming down. Magnus, unafraid, grabs the pawn for free. Magnus is going to come back or go forward and push the c-pawn, and the game is over. Alireza is still creating confusion. He's still creating confusion because if you play something like rook takes a4, here comes rook h3, and then here comes king g7, rook h8. Wait a minute, that looks kind of scary. So here Magnus sacks the rook, and now we have the following position. Where did Magnus's advantage go? Well, as it turns out, sacrificing the rook was actually unnecessary, and a move like rook h1 or knight e7 check could have been a little bit better. Magnus goes here and just assumes that, this position is a winning endgame. And he gets the pawn to c7, and naturally, that looks like it should win, but somehow, Alireza's knocking on the door, and I got news for you. Magnus goes knight c6, rook h2. Alireza goes here. The rook is going to stop the pawn. The rook is going to stop the pawn, and both rooks are going to harass the king. Knight d8, king g6. Firouzja's saving the game. Not only is this man saving the game, Magnus might get mated. Rook f3 takes. Oh my goodness. And the rook is stopping promotion. And if in this position you play bishop c5, I have f2, f1 is a check. Queen, but I got news for you. I'm mating you. I am checkmating your king, king g3. And in this position, Alireza could have continued the game with f2. And if Magnus had played something like knight c5, white can play f1 knight and mate. But you can go king g2 and hold the game. But instead of all of that, Alireza Firouzja repeated moves and made a draw. Now, my friends, draw's not over. We're going to see another Magnus game. Don't go anywhere just yet. Alireza Firouzja was busted in this game. It was plus 1.5. Magnus doesn't let advantages like this go. And Alireza swarms in with a bishop sacrifice, trades the queens, activates the knight, activates the rook, and gets Magnus shook. Magnus had to just pause here and go, I'm up a piece, I gotta chill out. But it's not that simple. Rook h3 is coming, f4 is coming. The computer actually wants you to sack the knight back. Now we have an Armageddon to play, my friends. Oh my goodness. Magnus, in this game, went completely galaxy brain, played bishop to d3, which is utter just insanity, but it doesn't work. And now in this game, we have e4, e5, 10 minutes for white, 7 minutes for black. Alireza Firouzja plays a Petrov. Take, bishop d3. Magnus is a man of memes. He played bishop d3 in one game. He's going to play bishop d3 in the other game. This man is a meme god. Putting the bishop in front of the d-pawn, utter nonsense. All right, we have a totally symmetrical position. This is it. No rooks, completely symmetrical pawn structure, no e-pawns. Magnus plays d4. Magnus plays c4. Magnus plays knight c3 and brings out his queen and advances in the center and trades knights and centralizes his bishop and brings his rook and activates his knight on the queen side trying to play c5 and plays c5 and plays knight takes c5 and attacks the queen counter-attacking measure. Alireza plays here. Now Magnus blocks the rook and is going to take the pawn on a7, and he's going to drive his rook into the position, completely suffocating all the black pieces. He's going to grab the bishop on d6. If you take his queen, he's going to take your queen right back, takes queen c3, and now there are targets on e5 and c7 and a7, which would allow white to get a winning position to do the queenside pass pawn. Bishop e4, rook c7, bishop f1. Alireza resigns. He resigned because he's forked. And if queen d5, there was take, rook d7. And this endgame is lost. How does he make it look so simple? How does this man Magnus, meme lord extraordinaire, put a bishop on d3 in 2 games? That's the only reason he put the bishop on d3. Do you understand that? He didn't play bishop d3 because he thought it was a brilliant move. He thought it was hilarious. This man Magnus is making content for mine and his YouTube channels and Hikaru's and all the other people in the middle of the rounds. This man is a content savant. Ridiculous. Magnus wins. My friends, many of you are going to depart now that you've seen the games of Magnus, but you shouldn't, because there was memes galore, like people losing games with 1 second on the clock. I will now take you to the matchup between Shahryar Mamedyarov and Hikaru Nakamura. This is the Armageddon game. This game was decided by clock. This was also an Armageddon game. This was also decided by clock. 2 games where players lost on time. D5. C5. Hikaru takes the knight on f6, damaging the pawn structure, and now replaces his pawns on the dark square like a good positional player. G3. Bishop G2. Castles. Look at all these beautiful dark squared pawns with Hikaru not having a dark squared bishop. Hikaru plays knight e1 and puts the knight in the center and puts the knight on f4, targeting the pawn on d5. We have bishop e4, bishop h3, bishop h6. All the bishops are staring at important pieces or squares. Bishop f3. And it is Mamedyarov who is just marching down Hikaru's pieces. Look at all this stuff. Sacrifices his bishop. In comes the queen, king f1. Hikaru's king is on life support, gasping for oxygen as all these pieces stare down. Rook to e8. Shahryar is about to absolutely brutalize this man. Hikaru plays knight to d2. Look at this battleship of pieces. I mean, this is terrible stuff here. Now Shah plays bishop e2, queen e2, gallops out of the position with eyes on the queen, with eyes on the knight, with eyes on the bishop. The only move, queen to g2, and now knight takes d4. Shah on fire, capturing all of Hikaru's pieces as Hikaru's king stumbles around drunkenly in the middle of the night. Bishop g4. Knight c2 is a fork, but not only is this a fork, this is a giga fork, because not only do you fork the rook and the rook, you also fork the square, which would be another fork. Have you ever seen a giga fork? What's up, TikTok? What's up, YouTube Shorts? I know a lot of people are going to edit that, so just want to say hello. Subscribe to GothamChess. Knight e3 check, and it is my man, Shahryar Mamedyarov, calling the shots. He is winning his Armageddon game. He's winning his Armageddon game because normally a bishop and a knight are better than a rook, but they're not better than a rook when they have extra pawns. A4. D4 check. Look at Mamedyarov go. Rook d7. Hikaru's king in the center of the board. Hikaru watched my video a long time ago on how to make a comeback in chess at the low elo, and he knew it was just to run the king into the center of the board, and that's exactly what he did. King to g7. Knight to e3. It's Shahryar asking questions of the position, but Hikaru playing quickly. Hikaru playing quickly, making sure that Shah doesn't have an easy game. Keeping pieces on the board. Shahryar down to below 1 minute. B4. King f3, and we keep shuffling. And now we have knight c3 and king e3, and Hikaru's back to the center. It's deadlocked. Can Mamedyarov save this game with 20 seconds on the clock? He plays g5. Takes. Mamedyarov has secured past pawns, but maybe Hikaru's going to secure some of his own. Takes. A6. Hikaru plays bishop c4. Oh my goodness. Shahryar still looking to hold the game. Will Hikaru find a way to win it? Apparently in this position after bishop to c6, rook g4, and rook h4, and Mamedyarov has broken in. E3 check. The king walks up. F4. The pawns are coming down the board. Rook h2 attacks the knight. The knight cannot easily move out of the way because the rook is going to stop the pawn. And there is rook c2 check. Hikaru plays bishop f3, holding everything together. Pawn to a6. Rook takes f3. The rook is trapped. The rook is trapped. a7. Rook f2. Knight c3. And now the only move. Rook a2 sacrificing itself so that the e-pawn queens. And Shahryar plays it, but loses the game because he lost on time. Shahryar Mamedyarov put his rook on a2 and hit the clock, but he did it too slowly, and he loses the game on time. And Hikaru wins the Armageddon. Unbelievable stuff. Utterly unbelievable. Oh my goodness. Hikaru wins in Armageddon. And this game was also decided by 1 second. This is the Armageddon game between Fabiano Caruana and D. Gukesh, Gukesh D, a.k.a. Damaraja Gukesh. It's a Spanish. It's an anti-Berlin. Take. Remember, white has 3 minutes extra, but black has draw odds. I have explained this in every single one of my recaps. A4. It's a very close position. It's a great position for white to have in an Armageddon because black is down over 3 minutes and all the pieces are on the board to maneuver. And oh my goodness, Fabiano is going to maneuver them. Here comes the knight to f5. The bishops get traded off the board. It is queens, it is rooks, it is knights. And it is a pressure position for Fabi. g3. The knight gets pushed back. The rooks are going to get traded and Fabi has carte blanche. He has queens and he has knights. And he is going to try to grind this down into an endgame. King f2. Not into an endgame, into a winning endgame. Queen g4. Knight f5. Gukesh is down to 19 seconds on the clock. 2-1-53. Now, if you trade everything, this is a draw. This is not winnable because neither side is able to break through. If you trade the knights, as he does in the game, only white can win because white's queen is very active and black's pawns are falling. Gukesh is down 1 minute and 20 seconds. It's over. Fabiano Caruana is simply going to march up into the position and he is going to find a way to trade the queens or the pawns and he is going to win. No, he's not because it's a fortress. You can't break in anymore. And now they're both down to 10 seconds. Wait a minute. What is going on in this game? Is Fabi going to throw? Oh my goodness. Fabi's winning. There it is. Gives a check, takes on f6. Oh, Fabi's thrown it to a draw. Fabi's thrown it to a draw despite being 3 pawns up. An incredible counterattacking measure from Gukesh. A fantastic practical decision here. In this position, Fabi had to give one more check first. He had to give one more check first, and then he had to give this check, and then he had to take with check, and then he would have gotten back like something like this, and then he would have been winning. He would have taken every single one of the pawns with check, and even then this position is utterly ridiculous to try to win, but he would have taken on b6, and he would have been winning. But instead of that, Fabi has thrown a draw, but Gukesh throws it right back. Queen g6 check, and now Fabi has a way out. Queen f6, queen g5, he's looking for the way out. Now it's winning again. Fabi loses on time. Fabi plays queen d8 check and loses on time. In this position, black was threatening queen b1 check, and it would have been a perpetual, and that would have ended in a draw. Apparently, the winning sequence is king h7, queen d7. Let's say black goes back to where he is. White plays queen b5. And after this, you have king c3, and after this, you have king to d2. If you have queen e1 in this position, over here, king goes here. But Fabi loses a game in Armageddon with 1 second on the clock. One man who made a comeback in this round was Wesley So. If you made it this far, Wesley So had the white pieces against Nodirbek Abdusattorov. It was a queen's gambit accepted. It was a line where black takes the pawn and decides, I ain't giving it back. Again, we've had a crazy round. If you're 21 minutes into this recap, 24 minutes because we had the sponsor integration, you're probably here to stay. Those other people left. You're better than them. Tell me in the comments if you're still watching at the 22nd minute, 24th, wherever I mention this. Queen g6. Look at this position. Nodirbek says, I'm going to take the money and I'm going to run. I am not giving you the pawn back. You gave me the pawn in the early opening. You had a chance to win it back. You decided to take that pawn. Well, now I'm not going to give you the pawn. You can develop all the pieces. You can do all this good stuff. We're going to trade, Wesley. That's what's going to happen. And then you're not going to win this pawn back. We're going to trade, and you're not going to win the pawn back. You could do this and then take on d4. That's great. Then I'm going to go here, and you're not going to win the pawn back. So Wesley says, okay, who cares? I never wanted the pawn back in the first place. Look at this. I never wanted the pawn back in the first place, Nodirbek. You're giving me the pawn back. You know what? Maybe I will get the pawn, but I'm going to get it on my terms. I'm going to get the pawn back on my terms. I am not going to be a charity case. I'm going to take the pawn back, and I'm going to attack your queen. What do you think? You're going to mate me? There's a knight guarding this, bozo. You think you're going to take this knight? The same knight is guarding it, bozo. Bishop d7, rook h6, bishop i4. The rook goes back to h5. Now Wesley says, Nodirbek, that was a really cute opening that you played where you thought you were going to escape with the pawn up, because now, not only did I win my pawn back, you're probably going to lose this one, and you are probably going to lose that one, and when I get in there, I'm going to take that one too, and don't think I'm going to leave your king alone either. Knight f6, rook a5, e5, knight jumps into the middle. It's a cluster. He takes the knight. He takes the bishop. I told you, my friends, a long time ago, this will fall, that will fall, that will fall. And then we are going to go for the king. The outskirts of the village, the sad little security on the outskirts of the village will be captured. And then we will make a beeline for the king. And while we're at it, we will go and promote a couple of pawns, maybe to 2 more rooks, so we can massively disrespect our opponents. Rook c7, rook f7, pawn takes f6. And in this position, if you take back, I imagine Wesley will go here. So rook d8, king f1. And in this position, Nodirbek resigned. He resigned because this is falling, that's falling, that's falling. Risky opening against Wesley did not pay off, and Wesley gets a win in Classical to boost himself up by 3 points. My friends, you know the drill. At the end of the recaps, we take a look at the standings, and if you are still here, you are incredible. 14.5 for Fabiano Caruana, who today was cheated out of half a point. Not the cheat, he's not cheat. He lost on time in a winning position in the Armageddon, so instead of 1.5, he gets 1. There was no cheating. Fabi has 14.5. Hikaru 12.5. My man Wesley So leaping up to 10.5. Anish Giri today beat Ariantari in Classical Chess. He has 10. Gukesh has 10. Magnus has 9 points. Magnus got to win the next 2 games. He is not mathematically eliminated from winning this tournament, but pretty soon he might be mathematically eliminated from finishing in the top half. Somebody find the last time that Magnus Carlsen did not finish in the top half of a tournament. Go. Go find it. Now get out of here.